Hello, my name is Tobias Carroll, and I will be reading from my novel Ex Members, which is a finalist for the 2002 Big Other Book Award for fiction. This is a very short excerpt from the opening, and it goes like this. Virgil Carey briefly stopped his walk at a mailbox. He slipped a padded envelope containing a cassette inside and continued on his way. 5 slow blocks from there, he heard his own breath come, a shortened sound. It was as though he was his own neighbor. Virgil felt his pulse throb out through his face and diffuse into the air. He remembered walks in the cold after old shows. He remembered stepping out steaming with sweat after some hall show or basement show had run its course. He thought about taking up running. He had taken up running a year after he had moved into the house. 3 blocks into his first run, he heard a strange sound, something uncanny and grotesque, and then realized that the sound was wheezing, and then realized that the wheezing came from his own mouth. That had been it for the running. He had slowed to a slow walk, continued for 1 more block, and then stopped. He put his hands on his knees and let the racked sounds come from his throat until a more respectable coughing began. He wondered if he might see any neighbors on his walk. He only knew a handful of them, even after 5 years in the house. There were no block parties or social events here, and Virgil didn't go out much. He recognized the local children from Halloween. He knew the silhouettes of certain neighbors who walked their dogs. General outlines were, for some, the best that he could do. Some nights he sat on the porch, sure, but he preferred to be inside. He often remembered driving through this corner of the town when he had been a teenager. One of his friends had lived in a house 4 blocks from what was now Virgil's home, and Virgil would often be his ride to various shows and trips to the closest movie theater. Sometimes when he was younger, he would find the right record and drive through the neighborhoods where his friends lived and wondered what he might see, artifacts of memory or precursors to scandal, instances of recollection or moments of reconciliation. These days, he stayed closer to home. He hoped for visions, hoped for the sound of a ringing phone. Virgil's house was largely anonymous. Plans to personalize it had never come. Sometimes when he would walk through it, he had the sense that it was a house full of guest rooms, a place awaiting friends or family to spend the night. None came. He had hoped that Dean might, or Osa, or one of his old .com co-workers. Circumstance had been his enemy on some counts. He himself had been his enemy on others. He had the idea one day that he should find a box of his old zines and dismember them and wheat paste the pages across bedroom and office walls. He would take old flyers from VFW halls and basements and venues that popped up in college towns. He knew he'd see the name of the alphanumeric murders on there, time and time again, and thought that he might not put those flyers up, not yet. There would be many more. A punk rock boutique hotel, he thought. He laughed as he walked, and hoped it didn't sound like a wheeze. Usually, when he went to the church, he drove. He was unsure if he had found some faith or if he simply craved company. It was a recent decision, still unformed, but he felt decent about it. His moments there on Sundays were some of the few in which he was around others. There might have been a brief moment of shaking another hand. There was a sense that he wasn't alone in the world. Some days he did have that sense. He would occasionally sign for delivery, or encounter a political canvasser or smiling savant looking to save his soul. 2 sentences of conversation, perhaps 3. It was the same with supermarket cashiers. He opted for late-night purchases, the stores open all night a 15-minute drive away. He wondered what they thought of him. He hoped nothing bad on his best days. There were nods to the cashiers, and nods to his fellow post-midnight shoppers, but otherwise he might as well have been mute. Even in the church, he slipped out at service's end. He would go for the services, but not for anything more social than that. Thanks very much.